I'm Frank Vaughn. It's now Saturday, October 25th, 2025, and the stupid just keeps piling up. We might as well just go right to it because it is what it is. BC to launch anti-tariff ads as Ontario pauses controversial campaign in a series of social media posts. Lord save us from our premiers who love to use social media. BC Premier David Eby said that the ads will be aimed at an American audience to explain who wins and who loses with the tariffs, to explain to the stupid Americans who wins and who loses as if they don't know or as if they even care. You see, this is the thing. It drives me nuts about all of this. There's so many things that drive me nuts about all of this, but this is one of those things, and we'll try to touch on all of them today, is that we think the Americans actually give a damn about Canadian hysterics and theatrics. We're an afterthought to these people, and thank God we are an afterthought, because if we were more than an afterthought, if they actually started paying attention to how stupid most of us are being right now, it would be bad attention. It's like, if you really think that Donald Trump is the great evil, that he is Sauron himself, why are you desperately trying to attract the eye of Sauron down upon your nation? Doesn't make any sense. So, of course, Fat Trudeau folded like a house of cards with his ad campaign, which, by the way, $75 million of Ontario tax dollars were used to purchase ads. At the same time, let's check out, where is it? Let me just go to the post. Here he is. He's going to give, so that it's the weirdest reverse bet ever. If the Blue Jays win, Doug Ford's going to send Gavin Newsom, governor of California, he's going to send them a prize. And if the Dodgers win, Gavin Newsom's going to send Doug Ford something. So it's a reverse bet. It's a very progressive thing. Like it's the inversion of sense. But at the same time, it's not just a friendly wager, because people say this is just a friendly wager. It's just good relations between a governor and of the state of the team and, Doug Ford, except he brought tariffs into it. If you watch this message, I'll save you from having to watch it. You can go watch it yourself if you want to put yourself through that torture. He brings tariffs into it. Doug Ford, the so-called conservative champion of Canada, is on a glad-handing tour with the most radical leftist Democrat governors in the United States. That's who he is hobnobbing with. That's who he's reaching out to for help. So $75 million, roughly $4 to $5 for every single person in Ontario, managed to screw the entire country. And the lesson that Eby learned is that he's going to do it too. I can't stop thinking about the fact that this seems like a coordinated plan to actually deliver the very thing that all of these idiots claim they oppose, which means that perhaps they're not idiots, if it is indeed coordinated. Remember that Carney and Ford just spent another weekend together. They are coordinating. They've cut the Conservative Party out of the conversation, and likely with cause. I'm not a great big fan of conservative politics right now. Last night, I attracted the attention of Prosaic P. Kent. That's his handle. This is Peter Kent, longtime conservative MP for Thornhill, also a news broadcaster, telling me to give my head a shake. Elbows up are required here. Now, Peter Kent was one of those very MPs that I talk about. The party system filters out brains. It filters out people of capacity. It filters out people who will actually stand for their constituents. By the time you get to stand in an election, by the time the parties, the filter, the mainstream political parties are the filter. They ensure only the most docile people ever get to stand for election. By the time you get there, your brain has already been washed. Peter Kent was elected, and he sat in Parliament for over a decade watching the country get carved up and sold off, and he did nothing. He wants to lecture me about elbows up. It's not just the Liberals who have been bad for Canada. It was the Conservatives, too. All the way back to 1982. Brian Mulroney wasn't some hero. It disgusts me. It puts bile in my throat to think that there are people who would celebrate the accomplishments of Brian Mulroney, so-called accomplishments of Brian Mulroney. And Stephen Harper, just because Justin Trudeau kicked the door wide open, the people who came before opened that door in the first place and stuck their foot in it firmly and made sure that Canada was deindustrialized, that we stopped manufacturing things, that we stopped making things, that we became a resource colony. Stephen Harper set records for immigration as well from the third world. It's just that the Liberals went so far beyond using many of the mechanisms that were in play during the Harper years. So Peter Kent wants to lecture me. He wants to tell me about my elbows up. He was there when the country was sold off, and he did nothing. And I ask him, and it's a question I have for Ebby, and it's a question I have for Ford. Do you have your elbows up for China, prosaic Peter Kent? Or is that too far outside the official virtuous narrative? These morons aren't buying ads in China. China's crushing canola. China's crushing several sectors of the Canadian economy right now. We're in a trade war with China. Mark Carney, the hero of Ebby and the hero of Doug Ford that they're coordinating with, has identified in the main federal debate that China is our principal geopolitical adversary. And yet they've got nothing to say about what China is doing to Canada right now. Their hysterics are entirely aimed at the United States. They're not trying to buy ads in Chinese media. They're not summoning the Chinese ambassador. They're not doing a boycott of Chinese goods. It's only the Americans. And it honestly makes me wonder, because I've said on this channel that it looks like Mark Carney is here to tie us to the sinking ship of Europe. That is what the play looks like to me. But I have to wonder sometimes if the coordination between the premiers and the prime minister, this elbows up nonsense, is to get Canadians all together in one mass fighting the Americans while the real enemy takes this country apart. This is actually nothing new. I've said much the same before. But I can't for the life of me make sense of BC launching anti-tariff ads in the wake of what happened in Ontario if the objective isn't just, first off, completely weaken our hand with the Americans. They have no need to give us anything. In the midst of a very important trade negotiation for Canada, I don't know how people don't understand this. We cannot replace the $600 billion in trade we do with the United States. That's real money. That's real trade. When we talk about GDP, we talk about Canada having a 2.2 trillion GDP. I've talked about on this channel how a large percentage of that is government. So that's extractive spending. So they have to steal it from somewhere else and then re-spend it, and then we call that gross domestic product. It's also borrowing. Credit card borrowing feeds into the GDP. Your backyard garden feeds into the GDP. I've pointed out on this channel with some basic math how money laundering and criminal activity is somewhere between 10 and 20% of our GDP. That $600 billion represents about 30% of our GDP, but it's real value, it's real dollars, it's real trade, it's the last vestige of Canada and what we produce. We can double, as Carney said last week, we can double our trade over the next 5 or 10 years with the outside world, and it's not even a drop in the bucket compared to what we do with the United States. They're irreplaceable. I don't know how people think we can just pick the country up and move it continentally and become more integrated with places that are oceans away. Why we're not talking about China, this totalitarian hellhole for all the progressives out there, marching with the pro-Palestine diaspora here in Canada, forcing the Canadian government to recognize the Palestinian state, talking about Muslim rights or Canadian value, or Muslim values or Canadian values, and all this nonsense they go on about. China's got 2 million of them in chains. They're enslaving them. They're killing them off. They're building some of the goods that we're buying from China. No one says a word. Same when it comes to the Christians that are dying in Nigeria. But setting that aside, because we're specifically talking about China here, BC, Ontario, Carney, big blind spots for China. It's like we have to focus narrowly on the United States to keep Canadians from fighting the actual battle of preserving the country, if there's even a country left to preserve. Now, like I said, Polyev is grossly out of position. Let's check out this tweet. All of today's trade and tariff chaos could have been avoided if Mark Carney had kept his promise to negotiate a win and get a deal by July 21st. But his weak diplomacy and broken promises have left premiers no choice but to take things into their own hands. We must fight for our workers and businesses from a position of strength for a change. So Pierre Poilievre is essentially trying to take a position. I actually said this sounds like a position, but it's distinctly lacking in an actual position. There is a position here, but it's mealy-mouthed. It's the exact same position as the federal government itself. Pierre and Carney, you can't fit a sheaf of paper between them on their approach to the United States. For all of their messaging and all of the money they spend on advisors to come up with these lame duck tweets, there's no difference. He thinks we need to be fighting with the Americans too. So Canada does not have a political opposition in this country worth talking about, and that's why Premier Ford, who's supposed to be a conservative, can afford to completely ignore the Conservative Party and, in fact, do everything he can to harm them because they are not a strong opposition. They're not offering contrast. There's no need to fight the Conservatives because they're too busy fighting with themselves. These mealy-mouthed positions, we must fight for our workers and businesses from a position of strength for a change. We don't have strength, because conservative and liberal governments gutted us and gave away our strength. We don't have military strength. We don't have economic strength. We don't have manufacturing strength. The country is overrun by foreign interference, and the government just hides it. We have a government that can ride roughshod over the charter and never face justice for that. There is no position of strength when we have made ourselves dependents on stronger nations. China has a national identity. India has a national identity. The United States has a national identity. The Europeans have a continental identity. Even though they're going broke, even though they face a crisis, even though their ship is sinking, they're still stronger than Canada. We have got to be the weakest, ballless nation in the Western world. And we don't have anybody that can stand up for us, let alone talk about what needs to happen here. The contrast should be, if Poilievre was a real opposition leader, he would say that we need to repair our damaged diplomatic relationship with the United States. I think it's far too late for him to pivot. Far too late. The Conservative Party would need a new leader at this point because they've married themselves to the orange man bad. Why have they done this? Because they know it sells to 60% of the Canadian public. With larger concentrations, it's not an even distribution. The orange man bad thesis plays to 3 out of 4 Ontarians, I would imagine, and probably plays to all of Quebec. In the western part of this country, especially the plains, it doesn't play so strong. We recognize the Americans for what they are, our friends, our business partners, the best ally we've ever had. But the Conservative Party has done the math and said, there's no point doing the right thing here because the right thing won't sell. And we're not in the position, we're not in the position to fight for the right thing. We're not going to tell the Canadian public why they're wrong. We're not going to talk about why the Liberals are wrong in their approach to the United States. We're just going to make these vague criticisms, but we're not going to actually offer a substantive choice. And I have to wonder, if all of this is just leading to an inevitable election where the Liberals get their majority. They don't need it. They don't need to pass a budget. They don't need elections. They can rule by fiat if they want to. But it will make things much easier from a public relations perspective if they have a majority government. And from that position, and this is the other thing, as I talked about yesterday, the big red machine, the Liberal machine, is undercutting several planks of the Conservative Party's domestic opposition, because you'll recall during the last election, I said I was going to vote Poilievre, I was going to vote the Conservatives. I did. I was wishy-washy at a couple points because domestically it might equate to, well, I worked on the thing that I think is most valid, which is the Western provinces engaging in more autonomy, talking about more independence, taking more independence, taking the initiative in that direction. While that's going on, maybe we could get criminal justice reform, and maybe we would be able to protect free speech under a Conservative Party government so that I could continue to speak. That's under threat. There comes a point at which if you can imagine the economic crisis that these morons are going to trigger by running these ads and further inflaming the United States, eventually we're going to get all the negative attention they seem to want to attract to us. And as I've highlighted on this channel, through executive orders and laws that are on the books and the very trade agreement that's going to be renegotiated, the Americans have plenty of tools in the toolbox to penalize Canada, both financially and in truth kinetically. Because there's this concentration of forces in the Caribbean Maybe it is just all about regime change in the oil in Venezuela, because America does love their oil wars. But I think Donald Trump is dead serious when he wants to clean up the drug problem in the United States. I think he means it. When he highlighted Canada's fentanyl problem, he probably should have been far more detailed. But that's not how Trump plays. He throws out a catchphrase and he gets it in the public mind, and he actually plays the game. We should take lessons from how he approaches things. But when he said the word fentanyl, what he's highlighting is Canada being overrun by organized crime. And we are. We literally are. The RCMP admits it. The government admits it. CBSA officials have admitted it. The world knows about it. The DEA knows about it. Their border services know about it. Even the Europeans, as I've highlighted on this channel, talk about Canada as an international crime clearinghouse. And now, other people, I just want to give a shout out to Sam Cooper, who's been trying to talk about the same thing, Chinese triads. Now, at long last, because the Liberals are talking about bail reform, and we'll probably get into that sometime next week. Maybe we'll get into that in detail when all the details are available. When the Liberals are talking about bail reform, all of a sudden, our algorithms on social media are feeding us a sample of the rampant crime in Canada. All of a sudden, we're talking about triads. All of a sudden, W5 is doing reports about organized crime in the country. All of a sudden, we're hearing about somebody who died in Australia from drinking a beer can that was actually methamphetamine. That is something that occurred a while ago, and we're just hearing about it now. We're being programmed. So the Liberals are taking that conservative plank away. They've suspended the carbon tax, so they're taking that plank away. And I know there's still an industrial carbon tax, and the Conservatives are lost in the weeds on that one. Like, it's you know, they try to play this game where they're catering to Canadian public opinion, which is why they've gone down the orange man bad pathway. But at the same time, they get lost in the weeds. They're trying to hold on to this carbon tax plank when Canadians have moved on. The vast majority of Canadians don't care about axe the tax. Like, they're so lame, and they need to lead, and they're scared of it. At any rate, with the Liberals robbing the Conservatives of their lunch, an election which again they're going to label the Conservatives pro-America anyway, even as Carney works to make the situation much easier for Donald Trump. Ebby and Ford are literally making things easier for Donald Trump in his play to economically break Canada and maybe break the country up and absorb certain aspects of this country. They're literally playing into his hand. But they're also playing into Europe's hand. They're also playing into China's hand. And I swear, it's like these guys just want to carve the country up and distribute it to everybody else, all while they claim they're saving it. It's Orwellian. The level of duplicity that every single one of these people is engaged in. Anyway, they get their election. They get their majority on a Save Canada message. They do the exact same thing they just did. Remember, it drives me crazy that it works. That Canadians are so damn gullible that this stuff works. They just did an election campaign where they told us we had unending emergencies in every single aspect of our life. And then when the election was won, they all went on vacation for months. And somehow it works. Somehow the Guy Felicias and the Liberals of the world still have following and still have people who think that their wisdom. Listen to this centrist normie. Canada started the tariff war with China because of America. What don't you understand about this? Not to mention, Ontario doesn't grow much rapeseed oil, canola, or aquatic products. Doug Ford is supposedly standing up for the people of Ontario that are being put out of work. So screw the West. And again, this is the Eastern attitude coming from centrist normie. They don't care about us in Saskatchewan. They don't care about us in Alberta. They don't care about our concerns or how hard we're getting hit. They're not trying to do anything on China. She says he's representing the people of Ontario. Seems to me he's speaking for Canada constantly in his advertising and his messaging. Like he's fixing, and I don't even understand how this would work, even though it came out of my own mouth yesterday, this notion that Doug Ford might be vying for leadership of the federal Conservative Party. Why does he even need to bother? He's so coordinated with Carney, it doesn't even make sense. He's got Ontario in his pocket. He's coordinating with the federal government. There's no opposition there. Maybe it would be a fake election. Maybe that's the process. I don't know. But the fact is, he speaks for Canada. He's literally, there's memes unending about Doug Ford mocking him being, Captain Canada. And this idea that we have to blame America for the trade war with China, how do you even get there? I don't understand it. Like, China has done this country so dirty. They have sucked away our manufacturing, and they've sent us nothing back but drugs and crime. That's what they've done, turning our casinos and our real estate industry into a money laundering clearinghouse, almost single-handedly putting the price of home, putting home ownership out of reach for everybody that's here, from every ethnic background, race, color, and creed. Nobody can afford to do anything, and a lot of that is the crime of China, and you're not even factoring in what Hezbollah and Hamas are doing here, as I've covered in previous videos. Like, China has done so much more harm to Canada as a nation when the Americans have just been waiting with bags of capital to buy our goods and to trade with us. And even this talk of integration and 51st state and all this other stuff, as our country's been carved up and sold off, it's a kingly offer. People don't just get offered statehood. People don't get offered entry into the best nation the world has ever created. And I know that some people might disagree with that. I don't know how. They created a constitution that stood for a quarter millennium. That's a hell of an accomplishment. Canada, in its current form, is only barely 43 years old. And for those who think it's older than that, I'm sorry, but your country was replaced in 1982 and you didn't do anything. You didn't say anything then. You're only reacting now because you're told to hate the orange man. You're told to hate the country that has only enriched us, has only defended us, and has been a damn good neighbor. At the same time, centrist normie, representing millions of Canadians, have the blinders on when it comes to China. You get to a point where you just feel like there's nothing left to say, that it's all been said already, and you almost just want to sit in silence and watch it all burn down. And hopefully there's a couple provinces in this federation that are smart enough to jump on the life raft. I'm Frank Vaughn. I'll see you in the next one.